Most men spend years trying to understand women, and almost all of that effort gets wasted. It's not because they lack patience. It's not because they lack good intentions. It's because they're studying the wrong things entirely, chasing tricks, lines, and strategies when the real answers were never about strategy at all. Attraction, respect, and connection are governed by patterns most men never slow down long enough to notice. Once you see these patterns clearly, you stop guessing, you stop overcorrecting, and you start becoming the kind of man whose presence naturally earns trust instead of chasing it. Today, I'm going to walk you through 10 psychological truths about women that most men either misunderstand or never learn at all. Stay with me until the end because the 10th truth is the one that quietly determines whether everything else on this list actually works. Number 1. She remembers how you made her feel long after she forgets what you said. Most men think the right words are what wins someone over, the perfect thing to say in the moment, the clever response, the line that sounds impressive. But that's not what stays with a person. What stays is the feeling underneath the words. Did she feel safe around you, or did she feel like she was being managed? Did she feel like herself, or like she had to perform a version of herself to keep your interest? A man who is constantly rehearsing what to say next is a man who isn't actually present, and people can feel that absence even when they can't name it. The mistake isn't caring about your words. The mistake believing words alone are the mechanism. What actually shapes the way someone experiences you is your tone, your timing, your attention, and whether your energy stays consistent when the conversation isn't going anywhere impressive. You don't need the perfect sentence. You need presence. A man who's fully in the room, not performing for it, is remembered long after the man with better lines is forgotten. Say less, mean more. That's the shift. Number 2. She reads your certainty before she reads your words. Confidence isn't loud, and it isn't something you announce. Most men think certainty means having a strong opinion on everything or never admitting doubt. That's not certainty. That's insecurity wearing a costume. Real certainty is quieter than that. It shows up in how you carry a pause. It shows up in whether you need her reaction to know how you feel about something. A man who's constantly checking her face after every sentence to see if he's landing well has already told her, without a single word, that his footing depends on her approval. That dependency is felt instantly, and it changes how she experiences the entire interaction. The fix isn't to fake indifference or pretend nothing affects you. That's just certainty's evil twin, and it reads as coldness instead of strength. The fix is building an internal reference point that doesn't move based on her response. Know what you think before you say it. Know how you feel before you ask how she feels. When your center doesn't depend on her reaction, your presence stops asking for permission to exist. That's what certainty actually looks like, and it's felt before it's spoken. Number 3. She tests for consistency, not perfection. A lot of men believe they need to be flawless, always composed, always saying the right thing, never caught off guard. That belief creates enormous pressure, and ironically, it makes men less trustworthy, not more. Nobody actually trusts perfection because perfection isn't real, and on some level, everyone knows it. What people trust is a pattern they can predict. If you're warm on Monday and distant on Wednesday for no reason she can identify, she doesn't conclude you're complicated. She concludes you're unreliable. The mistake isn't having off days. Everyone has off days. The mistake is letting your mood dictate your behavior towards someone else without any accountability for the gap. Consistency doesn't mean being the same intensity every single day. It means your values don't change even when your energy does. You can be tired and still respectful. You can be stressed and still follow through on what you said you'd do. That's the version of reliability that actually earns trust, not the performance of never having a bad day, but the discipline of staying steady inside one. Number 5. She withdraws to protect herself, not to punish you. When a woman goes quiet or creates distance, most men interpret it as an attack, a punishment for something they did, or a game meant to provoke a reaction. That interpretation almost always leads to the wrong response, chasing, over-explaining, or spiraling into anxious behavior that makes the distance worse. But withdrawal is very often something else entirely. It's a nervous system protecting itself. It's someone stepping back to process before she says something she can't take back, or to see whether the connection can hold steady without her constant effort keeping it alive. The mistake isn't treating every pause as a crisis that needs to be fixed immediately. The deeper truth is that a man who can tolerate space without panicking is far more reassuring than a man who fills every silence with anxious pursuit. You don't need to chase the withdrawal. You need to hold your own ground calmly while it happens. Stability isn't proven when things are easy. It's proven in the quiet, uncertain moments, and that's exactly when it's being tested. If you've recognized yourself in any of these first 5 and you're ready to actually change the pattern instead of just noticing it, write growth in the comments. I want to know how many of you are here to build, not just to watch. Number 6, she reads your direction more than she responds to indecision. This one gets misunderstood constantly, so let's be precise about it. Direction has nothing to do with control. It has nothing to do with making decisions for someone else or overriding what they want. Direction simply means knowing where you stand and being willing to say so. Many men, in an effort to be agreeable or easy to be around, default to whatever you want in every decision, every plan, every disagreement. It feels considerate. In practice, it often reads as an absence, a man with no center of his own, orbiting whatever she prefers because he hasn't developed preferences. Nobody finds an empty room magnetic. The fix is not becoming rigid or demanding, it's having actual opinions and holding them with warmth instead of hiding them to avoid friction. Suggest the restaurant, have a stance on the plan, disagree respectfully when you actually disagree. A man with direction isn't harder to be around, he's easier because there's something solid to lean against. Indecision isn't kindness, it's often just fear wearing a polite face. Number 7. She forgives effort long before she forgives dishonesty. Men often assume the biggest threat to a relationship is doing something wrong, making a mistake, forgetting something important, handling a moment poorly. In reality, mistakes are rarely what breaks trust. What breaks trust is the small dishonesty used to avoid the discomfort of admitting the mistake. A man who says, "I forgot, that's on me," recovers trust almost immediately because the honesty itself is reassuring. It proves his account of reality can be relied on even when it's unflattering to him. A man who quietly reshapes the story to avoid looking bad damages something much harder to repair even if the original mistake was smaller. This is the pivot most men miss. The goal was never to be flawless. The goal is to be accurate. Own the miss, skip the spin. Effort and honesty, even when imperfect, build more trust in a single moment than years of trying to appear like you never make mistakes at all. Number 8, she calibrates her respect to match your self-respect. This is one of the most consistent psychological patterns there is, and most men never connect the dots on it. How someone treats you is heavily influenced by how you demonstrate you expect to be treated, not through demands, but through what you visibly tolerate. A man who lets his time be disregarded, who absorbs disrespect to avoid conflict, who abandons his own standards to keep the peace, is quietly teaching the people around him what's acceptable. And people learn that lesson fast, whether or not it's ever said out loud. This isn't about ultimatums or keeping score. It's about calmly protecting your own standards without turning it into a performance. Say what you will and won't accept once, clearly, and then let your actions confirm it. You don't need anger to hold a boundary. You need consistency. Self-respect isn't loud. It's the quiet refusal to shrink, and it's one of the fastest ways to change how you're treated by everyone around you. Number 9, she trusts stability more than she trusts intensity. Early on, big emotional highs can feel like proof of connection, constant messaging, dramatic gestures, an intensity that feels like passion. But intensity and stability are not the same thing, and mistaking one for the other is one of the most common traps men fall into.
Intensity burns fast because it's unsustainable. It asks for a peak experience every single time, and eventually there's nothing left to escalate to. Stability doesn't ask for a peak, it asks for a pattern. The same respect, the same follow-through, the same presence on an ordinary day as on a good one. Over time, stability is what actually earns deep trust, because it proves the connection isn't dependent on circumstances staying exciting. The mistake isn't wanting passion. The mistake is believing passion has to come from chaos instead of consistency. The steadiest men are often mistaken for boring by people chasing intensity, right up until they realize steady is the thing they actually wanted the whole time. Number 10. And this is the truth that quietly determines whether the other 9 ever take root. She mirrors the relationship you have with yourself. Every pattern we've covered today, being heard, being certain, being consistent, holding boundaries, staying steady under pressure, comes from the same root system. You cannot fake calm you don't have. You cannot fake certainty you haven't built. You cannot hold a boundary you don't actually believe you deserve. All of it traces back to the relationship you have with yourself when no one else is in the room. A man who is constantly seeking outside approval to feel like enough will unconsciously look for that approval in every interaction, and people can sense that hunger even when it's never spoken aloud. A man who has done the quiet work of building his own discipline, his own standards, his own sense of purpose, brings something different into every room he enters, not because he's trying to, but because it's simply who he's become. This is why chasing tactics never work long-term. Tactics are borrowed. Character is built. And the moment your character catches up to the tactics you've been trying to learn, you stop needing the tactics at all. So here's what all of this actually means. None of these 10 truths are about learning to read her better as an end in itself. They're about becoming the kind of man whose steadiness doesn't require translation because it's simply visible. Presence over performance, certainty over approval seeking, consistency over image, self-respect over conflict avoidance. These aren't tricks you deploy in a conversation. They're the natural output of a man who has done the work on himself first. Build that man and you stop needing a list like this at all, because the patterns stop being something you apply and start being something you simply are. If this gave you a clearer lens on how to show up, both in relationships and in the rest of your life, take a moment to like this video and subscribe so more of these lessons find you before you have to learn them the hard way. And if there's one truth from today that hit closest to home, drop it in the comments. I read every one, and I genuinely like to know which one found you. Until next time, stay steady, stay grounded, and keep building the version of yourself worth being consistent for.